Remember our hollow root kum. Kum in the cow means what? To rise. In the Hithpolel, it means to raise or cause to rise. Right? Now, some of these verbs also occur in the D system with a similar transitive meaning, like raise. Very similar to the Hithpolel, and I don't want to get too lost in what the technical distinction might be between the Hithpolel and the Polel here. But consider the possibility of having one of the D system conjugations. What do we mean by D? It's a doubling conjugation of which there are three, right? Polel, Polal, Hithpolel, right? And what is the distinguishing characteristic of all three of those conjugations? Doubling of, not just doubling, but doubling of the middle root letter. All right, now, if we want to double the middle root letter, and we have a hollow root, what's the problem? We want to double the middle root letter, but there isn't a middle root letter, okay? At this point, the language seems to have developed a way of solving that problem, and instead of doubling the middle root letter, they doubled the other root letter, the second one, which should be the last one, okay? And now you've kind of created another form of a geminate problem, right? Now, this gets pointed in a distinctive way. This becomes the perfect of a conjugation that shows the pointing holum sere. Now, if you just saw this pattern, what would you think? Kal participle, right? However, this is, in fact, what has now become called the Polel conjugation. By the way, where does the name Polel come from? Little review of lots of things here. Remember where all the names of the conjugations come from?
Your vowels.
They come from the old paradigm verb pa'al, right? Pa'al. If we were representing, completely artificial, but if we were representing a hollow root with these three root letters, a hollow root would be represented by the first and the third letter, right? Do you see that now we've reproduced with a different artificial but template kind of a pattern what we have in kum? And if we turn that into this form and simply double the second letter, we now get this as our form, and we point it like a polel, and we would get the name Polel. You understand? I'm simply telling you where these names come from. But the rubric still works if you know the name of the conjugation, like nif'al or pit'el or hif'il. You should know what the perfect third singular masculine form sounds like, at least what the vowels are. Now, what we have here in the Polel is essentially a substitute form for the pit'el, all right? So the Polel is essentially the pit'el in verbs where you're going to have a problem doubling the middle root letter. The Polel is essentially a substitute for the pit'el in verbs where you're going to have a problem doubling the middle root letter, like hollows. And frankly, some geminates are also going to show this problem. There is a second conjugation, similar like unto the first, which is the Polal conjugation. The Polal conjugation is different only in that secondary vowel, and the Polal conjugation is, for all practical purposes, a substitute for the Polal conjugation, that is a D system passive for verbs that don't have a middle root letter. And I'll bet you can figure out that there's also a Hithpolel or if we were working with the verb cum, it would be hithpolel. And this is the so-called Hithpolel, which is a substitute for the Hithpolel, as you already had figured out. Okay? Once again, this is a topic that you need to know something about. We're not going to spend any time memorizing the paradigms or worrying about these other than doing the exercises for this lesson and seeing that you can deal with them. All right? This is kind of a, if needed, a lecture. Okay? There will be a time when you'll need to know this.